Good morning, period 6. Welcome to e-learning day, 7,000, I feel like at this point. Today we are going to continue with exponents, but now what we have to do is we have to add in negative exponents. And I'm going to make this a two-part video. You'll watch part 1 today, and then part 2 probably won't come around until Friday. Today we're going to focus on what are negative exponents and then putting negative exponents in problems that involve multiplication. And then Friday what we'll do is we'll add in division. So just so you know, this is kind of a big section. And then next week we'll kind of put it all together and hopefully finish up exponents. All right, so here we go. So the first thing we have to address is what are negative exponents? So I gave you 3 examples here: 2 to the negative third, 5 to the negative second, and 8 to the negative sixth. The first thing I'm going to tell you is negative exponents really have nothing to do with negatives. In other words, 2 to the negative third is not negative 8, 5 to the negative second is not negative 25. The negative exponent actually means something completely different. It means reciprocal. So negative exponents mean reciprocal. Now, think about what reciprocal is. When you think about fractions, it means flip it over. Okay, now I know that doesn't make any sense yet. Okay, but I'll try to make more sense of it right now. So 2 to the negative third, okay? If I wrote 2 to the negative third as a fraction, I would put it over 1. Well, reciprocal means flip it over. So 2 to the negative third really means I'm going to flip literally the whole thing over. And when I flip it over, the exponent becomes positive. Okay? So 5 to the negative second, okay, means really 5 to the negative second over 1, which means I'm going to flip it over. And when I flip it over, the negative exponent goes away. Now, of course, I would never leave 2 to the third in an answer or 5 squared in an answer, so I would go ahead and multiply out those numbers. So 1 over 2 to the third is 1/8, and 1 over 5 squared is 1/25. Now, what about this a to the negative sixth? Well, again, same thing. It's really over 1. So if I flip it over, this just becomes 1 over a to the sixth. Okay? Okay, so here's some more examples of negative exponents, a little different from the last page. So what happens if the negative exponent's on the bottom of a fraction? Well, again, same thing, it means reciprocal. So if it's 1 over 6 to the negative second, what that means is I'm going to literally flip over the fraction and make it 6 squared over 1. Again, once I do the reciprocal, the negative exponent is totally gone. All right, and then 6 squared is just 36. 1 over 8 to the negative first. Again, I'm going to flip it over, and it becomes 8 to the first over 1. And then, of course, 8 to the first is just 8. 1 over x to the negative fifth. Again, if I flip it over, it becomes x to the fifth over 1. And we're just going to write x to the fifth. We're not going to put that 1 in there. And then what happens when I get this little mix over here on the right in red? A to the negative third over b to the negative fourth. Well, because they both have negative exponents, what that means is we're literally going to flip both of them. So a to the third goes to the bottom, and b to the fourth goes to the top. And then if I could simplify, I would, but a's and b's aren't the same, so that's done. All right, so now let's apply these negative exponent skills to actually doing problems. And we're going to do all kinds of problems. None of these are going to look alike. And then what's going to happen is you're going to do a worksheet today that has like one of each of these on there. This is why it's important. You've got to watch the video before you do the worksheet. You would have no clue what to do. And so far, I haven't mentioned, here's a very, very important thing you have to remember for negative exponents. And it is this, okay? You should never, ever have an answer with a negative exponent in it. If you do, then you know you've missed the problem. So again, there can be no negative exponents in answers. So just know that. No negative exponents in answers. If you have a negative exponent, you've automatically missed it. Okay, so if we look at this problem right here, x to the negative second times x to the negative fifth times x to the ninth. I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this problem. Okay? The first way, I'm going to go back to our multiplication rule, and that said that anytime you have like bases, you add the exponents. So if I take x to the negative 2 plus negative 5 plus 9, and I do the math there, negative 2 plus negative 5 is negative 7, plus 9 is just x squared. I'm done. Now, method 2 would be, what if I wanted to do this using reciprocal, like I just talked about in the last couple of slides? So what I could do is this. I could take this entire problem and I could make it one big fraction. Okay, that's allowed. And what that would mean is, what would I do? Well, the x to the negative second would go on the bottom because it has a negative exponent, which means it's a reciprocal. So I would make it x squared on the bottom because it's on top. You flip it, it goes to the bottom. X to the negative 5, negative exponent, I flip it, it goes to the bottom. X to the ninth is on top and it has a positive exponent, so I'm just going to leave it where it is. Okay, so now what? Well, remember when we talked about when we were doing division, we actually played the game with these guys. So if I have x to the ninth on top, and on the bottom, if I put those together, I have x to the 7th. Which one wins by how many? Well, the 9 on top by 2. So the answer is, there's more on top, so my answer is just x squared. So notice I got the same answer two ways. You got to understand it in one of those concepts. All right, so let's go on. All right, so here's problem number 2. So I have a to the negative second b cubed times a to the 6th b to the negative 5th. So what you have to understand is we're taking all the multiplication division rules that we've learned and we're going to apply them now with exponent rules. So think about, if that would have been a to the second and a to the 6th, we would have just added the exponents. Well, same thing's true for negative exponents. So if I take a to the negative second and a to the 6th and I add the exponents, I get a to the 4th. Okay. All right, so now if I do the b's, and I take b to the 3rd plus b to the negative 5th, that gives me b to the negative 2nd. So far it looks like I'm done. But remember what I just said in the last slide, you cannot have a negative exponent in your answer. If you do, it's automatically wrong. So if you gave me this on a quiz, I'd mark it wrong. So what you have to remember is, technically, this is a big fraction, and I'm going to move the negative exponents and leave the positive exponents where they are. So the final answer to this problem is a to the 4th stays because it's positive. B to the negative 2nd goes to the bottom so that we can eliminate the negative exponent. That is my final answer. All right, so here's number 3. Okay, so we've got a big multiplication problem. We've got negative exponents mixed in there, but now what we have is we have a coefficient in front. Now, you have to remember coefficients, the negative 2 and 6, they don't follow exponent rules. They're just normal numbers, so don't confuse your exponent rules with your actual coefficients, okay? So here we go. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put an imaginary 1 on this x, and I'm going to start with my coefficients. So my coefficients are negative 2 and 6. All right, they're just normal numbers. So this is really negative 2 times 6. So that's negative 12. Okay, now, I'm going to mention this now. Negative 12, that's not a negative exponent. We can have negative coefficients. We can't have negative exponents. So that negative 12 is going to be in my final answer, and it's fine. Okay, so now let's go on to the x's. So we have x to the 1st, and then x to the 9th. So we're going to add the exponents. So far I have negative 12x to the 10th. Okay, now I'm ready to do the y's. Y to the negative 3rd and y to the 6th. So y to the negative 3rd plus 6, that gives me y to the 3rd. And now I've got to do my z's. So I have z to the 4th and z to the negative 7th. So 4 plus negative 7, that's z to the negative 3rd. All right, so here's where I'm at. My answer right now is negative 12, x to the 10th, y to the 3rd, z to the negative 3rd. That's not okay. I have a negative exponent. The negative 12 is fine. The z to the negative 3rd is not. So remember, this is a big fraction. So now let's move what we need to move and leave alone what is positive. So the negative 12 is going to stay because it's a coefficient. We're not going to touch it. The x to the 10th is positive. We're not going to touch it. The y to the 3rd is positive. We're not going to touch it. The only thing that is moving is z to the negative third, and it goes to the bottom. And again, when the negative exponent moves to the opposite place, the reciprocal, the negative exponent goes away. That's my final answer. Okay, here's number 4. 3, a to the negative second, b to the fourth, c to the negative third, all to the power of 2. So now we've got to use the power to a power rule with our negative exponents, okay? So you're just going to do whatever we did with power to a power, but we're also going to apply the negative exponent. So see how everything just keeps building on what we already know. All right, so here we go. So first of all, we've got to use our coefficient. We're going to focus on the coefficient first. So we have 3, and it's to a power of 2. So I'm just going to write that down. Eventually, I'm going to multiply that out. One key thing I would tell you is don't try to do too many things on these because it gets very confusing, okay? All right, let's go to the a. So we have a to the negative second to the power of 2. So I'm going to write down negative 2 times 2. And again, I'm going to come back and do it in a minute. All right. So then we have b to the fourth. So b to the fourth to the power of 2. Because remember, power to a power, we multiply the exponents. And then last, we have the c to the negative 3 to the second. All right. So what do we have here? So 3 squared. I can do that. That's 9. A to the negative second to the second would be a to the negative fourth. B to the 4 times 2 is b to the 8th. And then c to the negative 3 times 2 is c to the negative 6. So I've done my power to a power rule, but now I've got to look and see, oh, I have negative exponents. So this can't be my final answer. So again, this is where I make it one big fraction bar. And then I say to myself, okay, the 9 stays where it's at. A to the negative fourth. I need a positive exponent, so I'm going to flip it, and it goes to the bottom. B to the 8th has a positive exponent, so it's on top, and it's going to stay on top. And then c to the negative 6th has a negative exponent, so it has to go to the bottom. So my general rule is always positives stay, negatives go. Positive exponents stay exactly where they're at. Negative exponents have to flip places. Okay? Okay, here's number 5. Now, what you should be noticing as we started with number 1 to number 5, we're progressing and they're getting more complicated. So now not only do we have power to a power, we have 2 power to a powers, and then we're going to eventually have multiplication rules too. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to do each of the power to a powers, okay? So again, watch very carefully what I do. So negative 2 to the third, okay? I'm not going to really do anything with that yet. Now, if you really want to, you could go ahead and make that negative 8. All right, so this a has a 1 on it. So a to the 1 times 3, that's going to give me a to the third. Now I'm ready for the b in the first parenthesis. So b to the third times third, that's b to the 9th. And then if I look at my c, I have c to the negative 2 times 3. I've got c to the negative 6. Now, I'm going to totally leave this alone for now. I know it's not done. I'm going to go ahead and go on to the second parentheses. Okay, so if you look at the second parentheses, our coefficient's negative 5, and it's squared. So that's negative 5, and that's squared. Okay, so let's see. I know that's 25, so I'm going to write that down. Now I'm going to go on to the a. So I have a to the negative 4th to the second. That gives me a to the negative 8th. Now I'm going to do the b to the negative 9 times 2 gives me b to the negative 18. And then I have c to the third to the second. Whoops, I meant to write that up here. Sorry about that. Try to be consistent with my work so it makes sense to you. All right, so that is going to give me c to the 6th. So here's what I have so far. Okay, totally not done because I've got 2 parentheses. I have lots of negative exponents. So now I'm ready to start putting things together. So now I'm going to use my multiplication rules. So the first thing I'm going to do is deal with these coefficients. And again, they don't follow exponent rules. Negative 8 times 25 is negative 200, I think. Yeah, okay, negative 200. And then I'm ready to talk about my a's. So if I have a to the third and a to the negative 8, when I multiply them, I add the exponents. So 3 plus negative 8 is negative 5. Okay, now let's talk about the b's. B to the 9th, b to the negative 18. 9 plus negative 18 is negative 9. And then I'm ready for the c's. c to the 6th, c to the negative 6 and c to the 6th. Oh, that gives me c to the 0. Well, that's a first. We haven't talked about that yet. Okay, again, am I done? No, I have negative exponents. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to make this one big fraction like we've talked about. Now, that negative 200, is it going to move? No, because it's just a coefficient. It's not an exponent, so the negative 200 is going to stay where it's at on top. A to the negative 5th. Does that need to move? Yes. Goes to the bottom, becomes positive. B to the negative 9th. Does that need to move? Yes, it goes to the bottom. Now, c to the 0, what that means is I have no c's. All the c's totally canceled. So I do not put any c's in my answer. So this right here is my final answer to number 5. All right, so here's number 6. So now, what's the difference between this and all the other problems we've done so far? Well, it's a power to a power, but the power on the outside is a negative exponent. We haven't dealt with that yet. So again, I'm going to walk you through step by step how to do this. Okay, so first thing we're going to start with is the coefficient, and it's 3, and it's to the negative 2nd. Okay, we'll talk about what to do with that in just a minute. Okay, we're ready to do the m's. So if I have m to the negative 2 times negative 2, that's a 4. And then if I look at my n's, I have n to the 4th times negative 2, so that's negative 8. And then my p's, I have p to the negative 3rd times negative 2 is p to the 6th. Okay, so again, here's where I'm at. The problem is I have negative exponents, so I know this is not right. And I even have a coefficient with a negative exponent. So that's new. So again, I'm going to make this one big fraction. So now that I have a coefficient, but it has a negative exponent, I do have to move it. So the 3 to the negative 2nd is going to go to the bottom. And of course, the 2 is going to become positive now. M to the 4th is positive, so it's going to stay on top. N to the negative 8 has a negative exponent. It's got to go to the bottom. P to the 6th has a positive exponent, so it stays on top. Again, like I said, negative exponents move, positive exponents stay. Now, this looks like it's done, right? But it's not. I can't leave a coefficient with an exponent in my answer. I have to go ahead and multiply it out. So my final answer is m to the 4th, p to the 6th, 3 squared is 9, and then n to the 8th. That's my final answer. Okay, we made it to the very last problem for today, and it's the hardest of them all. But again, we haven't really used any division. That's why Friday we'll talk about division. If I tried to do it all in one day, I think your minds would be totally spinning at this point. All right, so here we go, number 7. All right, so let me tell you about this problem. First of all, we've got power to a power with a negative. We've got a power to a power with a positive. We have this negative in the second parentheses that has no coefficient. So we've got all kinds of stuff. This is why I left this one for last, okay? So here we go. We're going to start with the first parentheses, okay? We're going to do the power to a power. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down my coefficient negative 2, and it's to the negative 3rd. Now, I am not going to touch it beyond that for right now, okay? So now let's look at the p's. So I have p to the negative 3rd to the negative 3rd. That's p to the 9th. And then I have q to the 2nd to the negative 3rd. That's q to the negative 6th. And I have r to the negative 5th to the negative 3rd. That's r to the 15th. All right, so I've done the power to a power. I'm going to keep going on this one. Okay, now you could, if you wanted to, you could do the other power to a power and go from there, but I like to finish this first parentheses. So technically right now, this is what I have, okay? So now what I'm going to say to myself is, okay, so I've got some negative exponents. What do I need to do? So I'm going to put this as one big fraction. So I'm going to think about what goes where. So negative 2 to the negative 3rd power, be careful, watch this. That becomes negative 2 to the 3rd. So the negative on the exponent went away, but not the negative on the 2, okay? Just the negative exponent. All right, p to the 9th is positive, so it stays where it's at. Q to the negative 6th, it's going to go to the bottom. And then r to the 15th is going to stay on top. So this first parentheses, this first term, here's where we're at right now. Now, the only thing that I can still do to this right now is I'm going to leave alone the p to the 9th and the r to the 15th. and the q to the 6th. But negative 2 to the 3rd is negative 8. Okay, and again, that's just a negative coefficient, so it's not going to move. Now we're done with that one. Now we're going to go to the second parentheses, the second term back up here. One of the biggest things that my algebra class always misses right here is that negative in front of that p. It is not attached to the p. We've talked about this. That's an imaginary negative 1. That is my coefficient. So over here, I technically have negative 1 to the 2nd. Then I have p to the 4th to the 2nd is p to the 8th. I have q to the negative 2nd to the 2nd. That's q to the negative 4th. Okay, you need to remember there's a little 1 on this r. So r to the 1st to the 2nd is r to the 2nd. Okay, so there's where I'm at right now. And if you wanted to, you could do this just to keep the terms separated. Okay, so now we've got to keep simplifying here. So what's negative 1 squared? Negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. So technically my coefficient's just 1. P to the 8th is good. Okay, now again, remember this is a big fraction. So where's that q to the negative 4th got to go? It's got to go to the bottom. What about the r to the 2nd? Well, it's positive, so it stays on top. All right, so right now you got to think about where are you at. So down here on the left-hand side, p to the 9th, r to the 15th, and negative 8, q to the 6th. And this, I've got to put those together. Well, what's in between the two parentheses on the top? It's multiplication. So here's where we're at. This problem now becomes p to the 9th, r to the 15th, over negative 8, q to the 6th, times 1 p to the 8th, r to the 2nd, over q to the 4th. I'm totally not done because I've got things that I can put together. Okay, so first of all, is that 1 going to make any difference on top? No, I can forget it. Now look at your p's. So I have p to the 9th here and I have p to the 8th here. So they're all on top, so I'm going to put them together. So that's p to the 17th. All right, next thing, let's look at those r's. The r to the 15th and the r to the 2nd, all on top. So I'm going to put those together. That's r to the 17th. Okay, now look at the bottom, negative 8. He's important, and yes, he stays where he's at. He doesn't go to the top because it's not an exponent. And then last but not least, look at my q's. I have q's all on the bottom. That's q to the 6th and q to the 4th, so that means I have q to the 10th on the bottom. That's my final answer. So as you can see, from problem 1 to problem 7, we progressed from easy to difficult. So now you guys have a practice worksheet that you guys are going to complete for tomorrow. Okay, I know it seems like there's a lot to do today, but we got to make some progress here. Tomorrow will be kind of easy. Okay, so today is your hard day. Tomorrow will be an easier day, I promise. Okay, so please go do the practice worksheet. Keep your notes beside you because the problems on the worksheet follow the notes problems. They should help you. Okay, again, I will be available from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. today, which is Wednesday, April 15th on Zoom. The information is in the agenda of how you can get to me, the meeting ID and the password. Again, make sure you put your actual name or I won't admit you in. And then if you come in and you have questions, I'll be glad to do a couple problems with you. And then when you're done, you can leave. If you don't need me, that's fine. But if you do, I will definitely be there waiting, hoping people come and ask questions if you need them. All right, have a good day. Hope all is going well. Take care.